Hey Sam, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Asa. Thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. We should probably develop some sort of jingle or
Yeah,
welcome message to the audience, shouldn't we? I think that's what I see on other pods.
yeah.
So yeah, we'll save the jingle for next time. But in
We'll
terms
work
of an
on it.
introduction, good afternoon to all of our listeners. If you're listening in the afternoon, great to have you with us. Great to have Sam with us as always. This is the Process
In it together.
Men's Mental Health Podcast.
In it,
Is that
in it
the
together.
final
I think
title?
we've renamed it, haven't we? In it together, Men's Mental Health Podcast. Yeah.
There you go. Look at us, couple of pros. So, In It Together, Men's Mental Health Podcast,
Yeah.
coming to you live from our offices. So, Sam and I are both person-centered psychotherapists, and Sam works for the NHS. I have, and also has a private practice. I work for my private practice, which is the Process Psychotherapy.
Hmm.
And the kind of basis of the podcast is really just a forum where Sam and I talk through kind of common issues that we see in our day-to-day work, common issues that are presenting amongst our male clients, that people are kind of struggling with on a regular basis, hot topics. So last week we looked at social interaction and actually how that benefits mental health. You know, all the different ways that it's really beneficial. And this week we're following on from that by looking at some of the ways that that or some of the barriers to social interaction. So some of the reasons why people might not interact socially, and also um, some common anxieties within social interaction, some kind of social anxiety that people might experience. Okay, so has that covered everything as far as you see it, Sam?
I think so. Yeah, and I think we,
Think
if,
so, yeah.
if we've got time, we'll have a chat between us about kind of strategies and kind of what can help with social anxiety and sort of barriers to interaction as well. If we've got time, we'll cover that as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so Sam, just for the listeners, kind of benefit, the way it works is that either Sam or I will generally pick a topic for the week. So this week was kind of your topic, wasn't it? It was your pick, really.
Yeah.
So maybe you can introduce the topic a little bit more and say why you feel this is an important one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think what I was thinking was it kind of follows on quite nicely from our last podcast where we spoke about social interaction. And I think what we were sort of talking about last time was the importance of social interaction, weren't we? In terms of mental health and kind of living in the best way that you can for yourself in a sort of positive way. And it sort of got me thinking a lot of people that I work with, a lot of men that I work with, struggle with social anxiety, which would also obviously be a barrier to interacting socially. And I thought that it might be quite nice to kind of follow on from last time and talk about some of the barriers and some of the ways that we work with people to help them kind of get back into socializing, build that social network, start using
Mhm.
a support network. Maybe there's one already there. And it's about kind of realizing the types of support you have, or maybe it's kind of lacking, and we talk about how to build it. Um, I suppose a lot of the work that I might do with people that are struggling with anxiety is maybe quite CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy type ideas, which is quite sort of problem solving stuff that tends to work quite well with anxiety, kind of doing stuff, kind of pushing through the anxiety. So yeah, I thought that it would sort of follow on quite nicely and probably work as our podcast,
Mm.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that sounds fantastic. I really like what you said there about the kind of doing aspect as well. You know, I don't think when either of us were training to be therapists, they really talk much about taking action and doing things. But
Yeah.
probably because that was a person-centered course and so on, whereas
Sure.
CBT maybe is a little bit more around the taking action.
Mm,
But for me, it's such an important part of the therapy process, is the doing part, actually going out and taking action to
yeah,
try new things, meet new people, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. I really think that's a massive part of the growth and the development when the person is kind of grounded enough to go and do that. Would you agree with that?
absolutely, without doubt. We think about person-centered therapy, being very client-led and being non-directive. So we're not telling the client what to do. We're not telling them, if you're very person-centered, you're not really thinking about problem solving. You're letting the client come to the realization themselves. But the way I see it is, if I'm working with someone who really needs um, to problem solve something, that in itself is person-centered because I'm following what they need. Do you see what I mean?
Mm.
And
Yeah, yeah.
it works for anxiety.
Sure, sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally get that. And just for the benefit of the listeners, because
Mm,
obviously at the top of the show we talked about kind of both being person-centered therapists. So what
yeah,
we're talking about now is a more kind of integrative approach, which I think
absolutely.
most therapists probably use, which is where you do borrow and lean into other modalities as and when
Mm,
there's a need to do that. Is that what you're talking about there?
absolutely. Yeah. And I think that in
Mm.
itself is person-centered because you're kind of, as the therapist, you're seeing what the person needs and you're kind of adapting the way you work to best suit them. So I feel that
Hmm.
itself is person-centered, but that's another topic, I think, anyway. But
Another topic. So, so
yeah,
with that in mind, Sam, great topic for today. Social anxiety and barriers to socializing.
yeah,
Love the topic. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that would benefit from this. So, with that in mind, maybe you can start by telling us what is it? What do you mean? What's social anxiety? What does that mean?
yeah, absolutely. Um, so I suppose it is something what's holding you back from interacting with other people, I guess. Some people have it, some people may have it where they feel anxiety in larger groups, for example. So they might feel okay in smaller groups or with certain people, members of family or select friends. But when it comes to like a party or something bigger where they don't know people, they will feel this kind of um, very intense anxiety around situations like that. And very often what I
Mm,
see when I'm working with people is they will avoid those situations, whatever the situation is that's making them feel anxious, they'll avoid
mm,
it. So they'll arrange something, and then when it gets closer to it, they'll cancel. And it feels, when I've worked with people suffering with social anxiety, it feels like a very intense anxiety. It feels like
mm.
a real kind of all-consuming um,
Uh-huh.
rush over them, and they're just like, no, and they're straight, they just can't do it. I can't do it.
Sure. Sure, sure. Um, and do you ever have clients that have maybe gone through with it and they've actually gone to the event because maybe they feel that there's a bit of pressure to, maybe it's a friend's birthday, maybe it's their wife or partner or
Mm.
husband is going to the party and they feel like they should be there. Do you ever get that? So there's a bit of an issue there.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with quite a few people who uh, struggle with social anxiety, and it's very similar kind of situations. They feel like they need to go to something because they'll be letting someone down. And unfortunately, sometimes something bad does happen, you know. So then they're basing that on every other invite or
Mm,
interaction or
mhm,
social event that they're invited to after that point, and they're taken back to that point. I think that's very closely linked to the anxiety. They're kind of basing it on um
mhm,
they're basing their anxiety on something that happened before. They might have fallen over
mhm.
and someone laughed, or the anxiety got too much and they had to leave, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know
Well,
uh,
well, that's
Yeah.
that's the thing, isn't it? You mentioned there, oh, they might have fallen over and someone loved whatever, but actually, what I find is that quite often it's not actually something that's happened. It's kind of fear of something that could happen, fear of
Yeah.
not being included, not being accepted in the social circle, not fitting in, not knowing what to say, sounding a bit silly if they say the wrong thing. But it's the fear of that happening rather than the actual thing happening. I come across that quite a lot in my work.
Yeah. 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 It's an image of the future uh, that feels real to that person at that time, doesn't it? What you're saying
Yeah,
there, they've
yeah.
got this image of the future of whatever it is that's
Mm,
they're frightened of happening. It's definitely going to
mm,
happen because the anxiety is so strong
yeah.
in the body. It's
God.
the physical response is telling you that there's something wrong happening. There's some kind of danger because that's built into us.
Right.
It's a survival mechanism. So whatever everything that's happening in your body is telling you that this is real. So you start believing
Mm,
this image of the future is real. And sometimes when I work with people, we talk about that. We talk about the image of
mm,
the future,
mhm,
uh, feeling like a certainty, but actually
uh-huh.
all all the future can be is thoughts because it hasn't happened yet.
Mm, mm,
People see
sure.
this as this is definitely what's going to happen because I'm feeling
Sure.
this. Do you see what I mean?
And yeah, absolutely. And a couple of terms that I use in my work, you may do as well, but for the listeners, they might find it easier just to kind of categorize things. There's terminology like future tripping,
Mhm.
catastrophizing,
Yeah.
and those kind of things, which sounds like what you're talking about there with the visualization.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's different kind of traps that people fall into as well with anxiety, like different kind of thinking traps. So you have like
Hmm.
crystal ball or the mind, the crystal ball where you've predicted the future, that's definitely going to happen. I'm not doing that because that's going to happen. Or the mind reader,
Mm,
so you're predicting what people are thinking, or you're in a
yeah.
situation and someone's talking over there, they must be talking about me. It's because my jaw
Mm.
doesn't fit properly or whatever it is.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. Just another one that I don't think you've touched on yet is I find when I'm working with clients with social anxiety, negative self-talk's a massive one, they really kind of convince themselves even from as soon as they'll get the invitation, right? Or as soon as there might even be an invitation to something like that, they start to kind of have that negative self-talk, then the panic kicks in and that kind of thing. Do you come across negative self-talk quite a lot in your work?
absolutely. Yeah. And when I was thinking about this topic for this podcast, I was thinking of how closely uh, anxiety and depression are linked. And very often when I'm working with guys who struggle with social anxiety, you're right, it kind of creates this negative script or these negative thoughts, which are very close to depression and can quite often turn
Mm,
into depression. Um,
mm,
you think about the sort of, um, you know, you're thinking a certain way about yourself because you feel this horrible feeling. Anxiety is so uncomfortable and so horrible. You start having
mm,
these thoughts about yourself. I'm not good enough. No one wants me there anyway. All that sort of stuff, and that
mm,
can very easily turn into depression, I think. So I think that
mm.
to run parallel each other.
Absolutely. And the thing is as well, with what you're talking about there, all the negative self-talk, all the catastrophizing, all the future tripping, essentially it's going to discourage the individual from going out and socially interacting, which therefore leads to, well, or can be a big contributor to depression because they're isolating and
Absolutely.
then they're not getting the all the benefits that come with healthy positive social interaction, which we spoke about
Yeah,
last week.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just following on from that, a lot of people that I've worked with, a lot of guys I've worked with, who fall into this kind of trap, fall into this kind of cycle of being invited to things and avoiding them. So they're
Mhm.
kind of, geared up to go
Yeah,
and they don't
yeah,
go. People get used to you not going to things, so people stop inviting you to things. So
yeah,
then your negative thoughts are kind of becoming true almost.
yeah, yeah.
You see what I mean?
What, well, you mentioned something earlier which I really liked, which was the negative script, right?
Mhm.
Which is, I think what you mean by that is kind of, you're telling yourself a story, you're telling yourself a narrative, right?
Yeah.
That, I'm not wanted there, I'm not good enough to be there, I don't belong, whatever.
Mm.
And then because you don't accept these invites and so on, you're almost kind of creating that reality. You're creating the worst case scenario. Is that right?
100%. Yeah. It's self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? I'm sure
Yeah,
a lot of our listeners would have heard that term. You
yeah, yeah.
create situations, you create a certain reality because of stuff that you've done, behaviors that you
Mhm.
are
Mm,
doing, and they're not conscious. You're not consciously thinking to yourself, I'm not going to go to this event. People are going to get used to me not going, so they'll stop inviting me. That's going to make me think a certain way about myself. It's not a conscious thing. It's all driven by this anxiety that's extremely
yeah,
powerful.
absolutely. I was just wondering, Sam, have you personally had any personal experience of social anxiety? Or, I mean, whenever I've seen you, you always seem really good in those situations, to be honest. But
Yeah, I
wonder
think
if it's been a problem.
I think I have done at times. Yeah, I think through not really as an adult, but certainly as a kind of teenager growing up, where you're more self-conscious and you're more aware of kind of what people think of you, and that stuff's really important to you. I don't really care about that stuff now, so I feel much more comfortable in my own skin. But certainly when I was growing up, I was a teenager. I would use alcohol to feel more confident,
Mm,
I think, and take the edge off, if you like. And I think a lot of
mm,
people with social anxiety will do similar, have similar coping strategies. And
mm.
often alcohol is associated with parties and social interaction anyway, isn't it? So it's kind of socially accepted. Um, but I think people can often fall into kind of uh, problems with that. If you need
Well,
alcohol
well, ne
to go
well,
out,
negative patterns to essentially cope with the problem, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah. If
Mm,
you feel like you
mm,
can't go out without alcohol, then obviously it could become a problem. Um,
mm. Yeah.
yeah. What about you,
So
Alexa? If you experienced anything like that yourself?
yeah, to be honest, I would say most of my life, not so much in the last 3 years, maybe 4 years, but most of my life until then, I actually had like really quite crippling social anxiety.
Did you?
Um, which I don't think many people would kind of
Oh,
realize, right? Because they would probably see me as, I imagine, quite confident or maybe even, whatever. But yeah, no, I really struggle. And I would use a bit of alcohol. Didn't really work for me. I'd use like try and use humor.
mm, mm,
But quite often kind of miss the mark a little bit, kind of think I was being funny or try to be funny and then not really be very funny. Um and then other times I kind of distract by maybe trying to impress people with kind of stories
mm.
or kind of, unusual situations that I'd find myself in. And sometimes I'd actually, create those situations just to then have something to talk about and so on.
Hey, yeah.
Um,
Mm,
and then with that, so it kind of left me with two options really. Option one was to either not go, like you say, just withdraw, like you said at the start, just not go to the place. And actually, when we were younger, there was all these kind of like drum and bass,
Mm,
events to go to and so on.
mm.
I used to get really anxious just at the mention of those things, right? Because I knew it wasn't really my thing, but like all our friends would go. And so yeah, I don't think I ever actually did go because I think I always made an excuse or whatever. But but yeah, so I would either not go, or if I do go to a social event that I feel a bit anxious on, yeah, the go-tos would be the alcohol, or the bad humor, or kind of finding some way to escape, finding some way to leave early and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. And you said that
So
in the last 3 years, it's not been quite as present for you. I wonder
mm.
what's helped you with that.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I just kind of I mean I did I went on a bit of a journey and so on, like self-reflection and introspection, whatever, whatever. But the main thing was that I really just I guess it comes down to confidence in myself and knowing myself and just being okay with that. So it was like,
Mm,
what do I want to do? Who do I like to be with? And what kind of what kind of activities do I like to do when I'm with those people, right?
mm.
And for me, I always kind of, I think you can probably relate. I felt like with a lot of my friends, I felt under a lot of pressure to kind of drink or go to places they were going or do things they were doing and so on in order to have that social acceptance.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas, having done the work on myself, I feel absolutely fine now, just saying, "Do you know what? I don't want to hang out with that person.
Mm.
I don't want to go to that event or whatever, and I don't want to drink that drink. And
Good.
if someone doesn't like it, then that's it's not really on me, is it?
No, and I think that's a really powerful point that you've made there, Asa, actually, because what you've become more confident in yourself and knowing what you don't like and what you do like. And maybe a lot of your social anxiety was around doing things that you didn't really want to do and going places you didn't really want to go. And now that you've kind of
Mm.
got this confidence and you feel more comfortable in who you are and what you want and stuff, it's just feels much more natural, which makes sense
Yeah,
that your anxiety would kind of go away,
yeah.
actually.
I think it's a really good point. Yeah, I think it's a really good point. It's just doing things that you want to do with people that you like in
Yeah,
places that you want to go to,
yeah,
right? I mean, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But
it
but I
does.
think a lot of people don't do that, right? And I didn't do that for a long time. So with the say drum and bass thing or whatever it might be, I often didn't like the group or certain people in the group that were doing that. I
Sure.
didn't like the event and whatever, whatever. So,
Yeah.
you know, obviously I'd be anxious if I went and tried to do that.
Absolutely. But you felt like you should do that because that was being part of that group, being, you know, feeling like you're socializing and you felt like that's what you should be doing because it is important. But what you're
Yeah.
saying is it's also really important to find your people,
Mm.
find the right people.
That's it. That's it. Exactly that. Find your tribe a little bit
Yeah. Yeah.
and, and find what you do like. Because a lot of people don't know what they like. I didn't know. I don't know if you know,
Mm.
what your go-to would be or what. But a lot of the clients that I find, you know, they don't actually know what
No.
they don't have that passion, that activity that they really love. And like I say, it took me till I was about 34 to find something that I genuinely love doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that it's a real game changer. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
whenever I find myself in a socially anxious position now, whether it be at like an event that I didn't really want to go to, but I felt like I had to and whatever, I always just think, yeah, all right, you guys all seem really confident here and like having a great time. Well, let's see how confident you are on the tennis court, and then that's my comfort zone, right? So
Yeah.
let's get
Yeah.
on the tennis court,
Yeah.
and then we'll see. But
So
anyway, that's
I'm
just me.
guessing that's your thing, is it? Tennis.
Mm.
or one of your
Yeah,
things.
so that's
Yeah.
yeah, so I feel really comfortable there, and
Mm.
no social anxiety. It's such a
Right.
social activity. I really love racket sports for that because you can't really play on your own. I have actually tried a few times, but it's not quite the same. But
Tiring.
no, it's so good for social. Because if you think about kind of having good mental health, right? We talked before about community, social interaction,
Yeah.
um, and a purpose, and these kind of things. Well, with whether it be a hobby or an interest or a sport or a racket sport, whatever, those kind of things come as almost like those comes as part of the package, don't they? The
Oh, yeah.
the community, social interaction, purpose, and so on.
Absolutely.
So,
I wonder if there's something around um, fitting in versus belonging. And I wonder if a lot of social anxiety for people comes from trying to fit in to the
mm,
wrong group or the wrong activity or whatever, like we're talking about.
mm,
And actually, what you found is you belong. You feel belonging, don't you?
mm,
When you're doing the racket sports and doing the things you feel comfortable and things you want to do, because the other people
mm,
are have the same interests and
mm,
they're on the same kind of wavelength as you. Maybe
mm.
going to the drum and
Well,
bass
it's a
event,
really
trying to fit in.
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah. It's a really good point. And actually, we mentioned about barriers, right? At the start of the
Mm,
show, we're going to talk about
mm,
barriers as well as social anxiety. So then the question is, well, what is the barrier? Like, why aren't people so able to find their group where they feel comfortable, or even their hobby or interest? Why do people kind of sometimes spend a lifetime hanging out with people that actually, do you know what? I don't really like doing the things that do you know what I mean? But because you're my mates from school or whatever it might be, you're going to carry on down that path. Does that make sense?
yeah, it does. Absolutely. Um, yeah, yeah. And I don't know why it takes people so long to find. Maybe it's like obviously, like you said, you went on a real journey, didn't you, with uh,
Mm,
your sort of process, I guess. Um,
mm,
maybe it's a confidence thing, but people feeling confident, comfortable in their own skin, and maybe some people never discover that. Maybe without therapy or kind of going
mm,
on a process like we've been on to become therapists, where you have to kind of turn yourself
mm.
inside out. Maybe it's really
Yeah,
difficult to do that without the right
I
support.
think, yeah, I think as adults, especially, I'm sure females as well, but as male adults, we really don't want to feel vulnerable, right? We really don't like to be uncomfortable, out
Yeah,
of our comfort zone, and vulnerable. Is that fair enough?
absolutely.
And so as an adult, you know, the last thing you really want to do is go, right, okay, I'm not happy. I know that. I can work that out. I don't really feel like I fit in with this group of people, but they're my buddies, they're my group. So, I'm going to carry on down, hanging out with them. The last thing we really want to do is go, right, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and find a new interest, a new hobby, a new activity, um, and then find a new tribe that I'm going to hang out with who are much more like me. And people want to do that even less when they try once or twice and it goes really badly, right?
Mm.
Because then you've felt that discomfort, you've made yourself vulnerable, you put yourself out there, and it hasn't worked, right?
Why would I do
And
it again? Why would I put myself
what
through that again? Yeah.
yeah, because and I've been there, it's such an awkward feeling
Mm.
when you're kind of trying something new and you're like, yeah, this isn't for me, this just isn't for me. And so you might try it once, you might try it twice, and then you go, yeah, I'm just going to stick with the guys that I already know because it's more comfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Kind of you get comfortable feeling uncomfortable in a way. So the guys that you're used to being with, it doesn't feel right, and you know that, and it feels uncomfortable, but there's a comfort in that because that's what you've always done. Pushing
Yeah.
yourself out there and doing, feeling that uncomfortableness, feeling that vulnerability, that's difficult. That's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I went when I was trying to basically make new friends, right? Which sounds, I feel like a bit of an idiot saying that, right? Trying to make new friends as an adult. But when I was trying to do that, there's a group of guys that I knew, and they were having like a villa stay and whatever, and I went there, and I just felt like this was not me, this was a bad decision to go, and you're kind of stuck there for the evening and the next day and whatever, and then you leave kind of knowing that you didn't quite fit in, it didn't quite work, right? And so then, yeah, you have to kind of go again. You have to try something else. You have to try, a new hobby, a new activity, and eventually, people that I've worked with and on my journey, I stumbled across something, and when I did, it was a life changer. It was amazing.
Yeah.
But I do think you have to go through quite a lot of discomfort
Yeah.
to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that and that is anxiety, isn't it? Essentially, that uncomfortableness, those physical feelings, that vulnerability, it all feels like anxiety, doesn't it? I wonder if, um, in your experience working with men who are struggling with social anxiety, is there something around expectations of how we as men should interact in social situations? I wonder if maybe that's part of this in some way.
Yeah, I think that's a massive one, isn't it?
Mm.
And that actually feeds on nicely to the topic for our next one, which is our next podcast, which is toxic masculinity, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because yeah, I think you can probably say this. I know I can say this, that my actions and behavior, around kind of being in social groups has been times kind of di has been for to kind of fit in, right? And to meet that expectation, or to meet the expectation that people have of me, right? So you're kind of living up to that thing,
Absolutely.
that expectation. I didn't really explain that very well, but I think you know what I
I
mean.
know what you mean.
But in terms of my
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of my clients, yeah, absolutely. I think that expectation
Mm.
that I've seen with clients coming through of how they're what they're
Mm.
expected to do, how they're expected to
Yeah.
behave, I think has a massive impact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Whether it's being well dressed or well spoken, or being confident and going up to people and introducing yourself, and that feels like quite a lot of pressure, doesn't it? This sort of, I don't know if it's social expectation or people's perceived expectations. Guys that
Mm,
we work with, where they have a perceived expectation of what people expect of them in these situations. I don't know, could be both, could be either. Um,
mm,
but it does feel like a lot of pressure, doesn't it? And we often associate pressure with anxiety, don't we, and stress. But yeah,
absolutely.
I think this does really feed in nicely to our next one, doesn't it? The toxic masculinity. And
It
um,
does. It does. With that in mind, Sam, because I think the meeting's probably gonna
got about
close
3
in
minutes
just
left, I
a
think.
moment.
Yeah,
How long have we got?
about 3 minutes.
Okay, okay, good. Yeah, yeah, certainly in terms of say drug use and alcohol, on nights out and things like that. I think that, there is certain people expect, oh, you're going to go and do those things with them. And so then people live up to that. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And I think that could cause a lot of anxiety before an event, couldn't it? Because, oh God, I've got to, be this certain person or take this certain drug
Mm.
because I've always taken it, and actually I don't like doing it anymore, but everyone else is taking it and they'll be expecting me to take it, or I'm supposed to be like the funny
Mm,
guy or whatever whatever that expectation is.
yeah,
Sometimes you don't feel like that.
yeah, yeah,
It might not actually be you. You might
yeah.
be a role that you've fallen into.
Yeah, but it's hard to, be on a night out and everyone's getting, say, the shots in, right? I was at a birthday party last week, right? And everyone starts buying tequila, right? And they're like, oh, you have to drink your shot. And like literally they say you have to drink your shot. I'm like, I don't want tequila, right?
Yeah.
I'm playing tennis
Oh,
in the morning. I don't want tequila, but okay, I had some tequila, right?
mm.
But yeah, it's a perfect example.
Yeah, it is. It
And yeah,
is.
if everyone's doing those things,
Yeah.
then you kind of feel obliged. And I guess it comes back to what we talked about earlier, which was confidence. Was I confident enough in that situation to say, yeah, I can see you bought the tequila.
I don't want
I'm
to.
not drinking it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But sometimes it's easier just to go along, isn't it? And go, yeah, because
Right.
people are just, take the piss or give you a load of shit for not drinking it. So you just, I get it. I've fallen into that trap many times as well. But yeah, I
That's
think
it. So
we're just about kind of done there, Asa. I know that's a bit of a sharp ending, but yeah,
yeah, no, it's all
the
good,
next
Sam. All
one
good.
where we're going to talk
Yeah,
about
I'm really looking forward
masculinity.
to that.
Yeah, feels like
Yeah,
a juicy
it's
topic.
gonna be very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome, Sam.
Great,
Awesome.
great
Real
to
pleasure
see
to see
you.
you again today. And
Okay.
yeah, I look forward to talking in a week or so. And yeah, thanks to the listeners for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All two of them. I'm sure
Yeah.
they appreciate the show. So
Hopefully it's going
I'll
to build up
all
as
right.
well. All right, Asa. Take care.
I'm sure. Cheers,
Cheers.
Sam. Bye.
Bye. Bye.